We're going to talk about supplements, basic supplements 101, 5 supplements that can impact cardiovascular health. Now, we all know, again, if you've heard that once, you've heard it 100 times, you can't supplement your way out of a lifestyle problem. There's no question. If you need to lose 30 pounds of body fat, supplements are not going to get you there. But supplements can help. They help a lot of people in a lot of different places. For example, there's been a lot of information that's come out recently about vitamin D3 and COVID. So let's start off talking a little bit about vitamin D3. It's a major supplement for cardiovascular health. It helps us regulate insulin levels. It promotes cardiovascular health, immune system function, brain function, and nervous system function. There are 2 major forms of it. One is called D2. The technical name is ergocalciferol. It's produced by plants when exposed to ultraviolet light. For example, mushrooms, fortified foods. Cholecalciferol, D3, is by far more active. A lot of people use D2 because they say, well, it's kinder and gentler. The problem is it takes a lot of D2 to have any impact at all. And again, I think that just washes out the effort. In my patients, with myself, I use cholecalciferol vitamin D3. As I mentioned, it's biologically active. It's produced in humans and animals when skin is exposed to sunlight. But here's the problem. There's significant variation of that production of vitamin D3 from exposure to skin. Do not rely on exposure to the sun to be your only source of vitamin D3. Get checked. I get a lot of husband and wife patients, and typically I'll see a husband who's retired, out playing golf 4 times a week, 3 times a week, who's vitamin D3 deficient, and a wife that stays indoors all day who's got great vitamin D. And neither one of them are supplementing, and it just makes no sense. Now, I will tell you, it's so common to see a problem with relative deficiency in vitamin D3 that I recommend that people just go ahead and start with 5,000 international units supplementation, even while they're waiting to get their blood level back. Nobody's gotten into trouble with D3 at 5,000 international units. Now, what are some sources of it? Oily fish such as salmon, mackerel, sardines. I did a video recently on kippers, a lot of history behind kippers, and I won't go into detail on that right now. That's a bunny hole that I'll save you from. You can also get it from liver and egg yolk. The target vitamin D3 levels that we recommend are 60 to 80 nanograms per milliliter. You look at a lot of standards are still looking at 20 to 40. I don't recommend being satisfied with keeping it that low. Too high doses can cause toxic effects. Excessive blood serum levels like 125 nanograms or more have been linked to adverse side effects. I have a video of a patient that came to see me. She was taking 50,000 international units. That's a weekly pill that a doctor had given her to be taken once a week. She didn't know that, and she was taking it once a day. And I think her initial levels when she came to see me was like 145. I mean, it was a huge number. She was having some kidney function problems. When we saw that number, the lab reported it to us immediately. I called the patient, explained the situation. She stopped that immediately. We watched her kidney function return to normal. And again, she shared her story on our videos. Is vitamin D good for cardiovascular health? Persons with less than 30 nanograms were up to 5 times greater risk for developing diabetes than people with greater than 50. Less than 1,000 international units is not going to have much of an impact on preventing prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. So you see a study here. We will plan to put this content on the blog soon. It'll take a few weeks because we've got other stuff in the pipeline. But again, it'll help you understand and be able to go back and look up questions you may have about D3. K2. We've talked about K2 a couple of times. You get a lot of questions about subtypes. MK4, they have MK4 all the way up to MK13. The difference in those subtypes is the difference in the chain length. You may remember I showed you some of the chain lengths earlier in the presentation, in the intro. You can obtain these vitamin K2 from meat, eggs, cheese, natto. And again, it affects bone growth, bone loss, affects osteoblasts and activates osteoblasts and inhibits osteoclasts. One way we used to remember the difference between those two in med school is the B in blasts can remind you that that's building. So an osteoblast is building bone, and C is cutting. So C is cutting away bone, osteoclasts. It activates osteocalcin and MGP, a matrix protein, GLA protein. Again, some of the details on how vitamin K2 actually works. Is it good for cardiovascular health? There's a doctor in, I think, the Netherlands, Jolene Boylens. She's been involved in several studies demonstrating that K2 has a preventive impact on prediabetes. And we go into some of those studies on the blog if you want to take a look. A meta-analysis showed that vitamin K2 reduced type 2 diabetes risk 7% with each 10 microgram increment. It increased insulin sensitivity via osteocalcin metabolism. It improved insulin resistance via anti-inflammatory properties and lipid-lowering effects. Suppressed inflammation via inactivation of NRF kappa beta or kappa B, the NF-KB signaling pathway. You see those red faces, you know we're getting ready to talk about niacin. Niacin is a major supplement for cardiovascular health. Niacin is the only thing, prescription or non-prescription, that positively impacts all of the blood lipids, all of the cholesterols. The generic name for vitamin B3 forms is like nicotinamide, niacinamide, riboside. It's niacin. That's the generic name. It's naturally present in many foods. It's added to some food products and available as a supplement. Nicotinamide, niacinamide, it was discovered in 1936. It's part of the WHO list of essential medicines. It's an over-the-counter treatment for pellagra. Pellagra is a very, very serious skin dermatitis. Nicotinamide riboside, no-flush niacin, was discovered in 1944. There's still significant debate about just how well that works. Is niacin good for cardiovascular health? Recommended for patients with significant Lp(a). It also increases HDL. It's not recommended to take niacin supplement if you don't have any cardiovascular risks. Niacin's most common side effect is flushing. Yes, and to counter the flushing, there are a lot of different things. A lot of people like the flushing. They say, gives me a jump in the morning. Other people will take a shower. So they'll take the niacin about 10, 15 minutes before they take the shower. There's a couple of extended release forms, Rugby brand and Enduricin. We find that our patients and I myself tolerate those two very well and tolerate Enduricin about the best. It's got a wax matrix. So what's happening is you're getting a slower release of that niacin. There were trials of giving it with a chemical called lapropion. That led to the AIM-HIGH studies and the HbS2 Thrive studies which showed that actually it didn't work. And here's what appears to be the case. The lapropion, the chemical that decreases the flush, also appears to decrease the impact on Lp(a) and the other lipids. So let's move on from niacin, talk about bergamot for a minute. And again, we've got separate videos on each of these, and actually in, I think, all cases, more than one video. On my bergamot video, I talked about a brand or a type of bergamot called bergamet. It's in Calabria, Italy. Beautiful area, the birthplace of Walter Longo. Bergamot orange farmers there. And basically, they were getting beat up by the economy, the purchase price for bergamot oranges. Why? Because the organic chemists had figured out a way to make artificial bergamot. So, and in addition to being a supplement, it's also used in things like perfumes and teas. And you only get a few drops of the oil out of a typical bergamot orange. So again, when you could make it artificially, that really began to have an impact on the farmers. They got together, formed a farmers cooperative, got a couple of grants from the government, and actually did some research, some science, which indicated and showed, gave really good evidence that the natural bergamot was a much better product. So let me get back to script here. Bergamot is the oil of Citrus bergamia. It's a fruit grown in southern France, southern Italy. It's been known and prized for centuries in things like Earl Grey tea and perfumes. Is it good for cardiovascular health? Medical evidence that bergamot positively impacts both blood glucose and cholesterol levels. Like statins, bergamot oil has the same impact on the enzyme HMG-CoA reductase. Bergamot's also been shown to have anti-inflammatory and antioxidant effects. It improves LDL, HDL, and several other things. Too much bergamot oil on the skin can cause rashes. You know, every solution can create a whole set of problems. And yes, there's actually been a death reported by huge bergamot exposure to skin. I think it was with some kids that were playing at the bergamot farms and did not know the danger of this concentrated bergamot oil. When you talk about bergamot, usually berberine comes up, very similar in impact. Berberine is a traditional Chinese herb extract. It was used in China as an over-the-counter for bacterial diarrhea. It was also found to decrease blood glucose. It was originally made from Rhizoma coptidus, which is very expensive. Now it's made from Berberis amurense, the barberry plant. If you're a plantsman, you may recognize that barberry there. Is berberine any good for cardiovascular health? Yes, there's studies out there, there's science, there's true evidence indicates that yes, it is. Drops hemoglobin A1C by 2 points, which is about the same that you'll see with metformin. A meta-analysis by Lon and Associates indicated that berberine has comparable therapeutic effect on type 2 diabetes, hyperlipidemia, and hypertension with no serious side effects. How strong is that meta-analysis? And I get this question all the time. Do I recommend that people just not use metformin and use berberine or even bergamot instead? No, neither one of them is as strong. You do see some science which indicates that, yeah, they thought it had similar impacts. I don't think it does, not in my experience with patients. Now, the other question that you get, though, is, can I use them together? And the answer is yes, for sure you can use them together, and I personally do. Considering the relatively low costs compared with other first-line medicines and treatments, berberine has been seen as a good alternative, especially in lower socioeconomic populations, for treatment of type 2 diabetes, hyperlipidemia, hypertension over a long time period. Now, berberine's half-life, remember, is 4.8 hours. So if you're going to try to have a significant impact with berberine, you should probably take it twice a day, not once. Now, as we talk about common supplements, one of the big ones, especially in terms of diabetes, is very, very commonly used item. We're showing cinnamon on here. One of the other items that we talk about is Gymnema sylvestre, magnesium, fiber or psyllium, curcumin. There's a bunch of these that we have just not covered yet. And if you have more interest in going deeper in terms of supplements and their impact, the true science behind supplements rather than somebody's opinion, take a look at our supplements webinar. It's about an hour of time where we go much deeper into the supplements that are available, and we go into a deeper Q&A. Continue to get great feedback regarding the webinars, and here's why. You know, on the internet, when you hear a webinar, you expect for somebody to try to sell you something. We're not doing that. We're trying to tell you something. People are coming in with their labs from Quest, inflammation panel, OGTT, insulin survey response, and then they're finding out, do I have inflammation? Do I have insulin resistance? And where does that fit in terms of other folks? We're getting ready to start one for CINT as well. So again, people are really excited about finding out their own status. Looking forward to seeing you there. Thanks.